Welcome back to the English Hour. Today, we have Sophia joining us again to talk about something everyone struggles with: how to stay motivated while learning English. Sophia, why do you think motivation is such a big challenge?
Hi, Jacob. Motivation is tricky because learning a language is a long process. Without clear goals and encouragement, it's easy to lose interest or feel overwhelmed.
That makes sense. So, what's the first step to keeping motivation high?
Setting realistic, achievable goals is key. When learners break down their big dream of fluency into smaller steps, they can celebrate progress and stay encouraged.
Can you give some examples of good goals?
Sure, it could be learning 5 new words a day, finishing a short book, or speaking to a native speaker once a week.
Those sound manageable. How about tracking progress? Is that important?
Absolutely, using apps, journals, or even voice recordings helps learners see how far they've come, which boosts confidence.
Confidence is huge. What if someone feels stuck and loses motivation?
That's normal. I recommend switching up your routine. Try watching movies, listening to music, or chatting with friends in English. New activities make learning fun again.
Variety is the spice of language learning, huh? What role does community play in motivation?
A big role. Joining study groups or online forums creates support networks where learners encourage each other and share tips.
How can someone find the right community?
Platforms like Reddit, language exchange apps, and Facebook groups are great places to start. Look for active and friendly groups.
What about rewards? Can treating yourself help?
Definitely. Small rewards after meeting goals, like a favorite snack or a fun outing, create positive reinforcement.
Let's talk mindset. How important is a positive mindset in language learning?
Crucial. Believing you can improve helps overcome obstacles. Mindset shifts from "I can't" to "I'm learning" make all the difference.
What advice do you have for dealing with frustration?
Take breaks, don't be too hard on yourself, and remind yourself why you started. Sometimes stepping back refreshes your motivation.
Great advice. How can technology help keep motivation alive?
Language apps with gamified lessons, reminders, and streaks help learners stay engaged daily.
Which apps do you recommend?
Duolingo, Memrise, and HelloTalk are popular. They make learning interactive and social.
Let's not forget the power of music and movies. How do they motivate learners?
They make language relatable and entertaining. Singing along or watching favorite shows in English creates immersive practice without feeling like work.
What if someone's shy about speaking? Does that affect motivation?
It can. Encouraging safe, low-pressure environments to practice speaking helps build confidence gradually.
How can learners create those safe spaces?
Language partners, tutors, or even talking to themselves in the mirror helps. The key is practicing regularly without fear.
Sophia, what's your take on learning through mistakes? Does fear of making mistakes kill motivation?
It often does. But making mistakes is actually how we learn best. Embracing errors as natural steps boosts motivation instead of killing it.
Can parents or teachers help keep kids motivated when learning English?
Yes, by making learning fun and celebrating every achievement, no matter how small. Encouragement is everything.
How about adults learning English? Any specific motivation tips?
Adults benefit from connecting learning to personal goals, like career growth or travel, and finding joy in progress.
Do you think motivation changes over time during the learning journey?
Definitely. Early excitement might fade, but deeper motivation develops as learners see results and connect language to real life.
Sophia, how do you personally stay motivated when learning something new?
I set many goals, mix fun with study, and remind myself of the bigger picture regularly.
That's inspiring. What about motivation for those balancing busy lives?
Short, consistent sessions work best. Even 10-15 minutes a day adds up and keeps motivation steady.
How important is celebrating milestones?
Very important. Celebrations mark progress and recharge motivation for the next step.
Can motivation be influenced by external factors like environment?
Yes, a supportive environment with minimal distractions encourages focus and motivation.
What's a practical tip to create such an environment?
Designate a cozy, quiet study spot with all your materials handy. Consistency builds habit.
Sophia, what role does curiosity play in motivation?
Huge role, curiosity about language, culture, and people keeps learners engaged and excited.
How can learners spark curiosity if they feel bored?
Explore new topics, try different media, or set challenges like learning idioms or slang.
Lastly, how can we keep motivation alive during tough times?
Connect with your why, the reason you started. Visualize success, and don't hesitate to ask for help when needed.
That wraps up our deep dive into motivation. Thanks, Sophia, for sharing such valuable insights. Let's keep this conversation going. What's your take on motivation?
Thanks, Jacob. Motivation really is a journey, not a destination. I always say it's about finding joy in every step, no matter how small.
Absolutely. Speaking of joy, what are some fun activities that can sneak in learning without feeling like studying?
Great question. Playing language games, watching English YouTube channels, or even cooking with English recipes can be surprisingly effective and enjoyable.
Cooking with English recipes, that's clever. Do you have any favorite recipes that are good for learners?
I do. Simple dishes like pancakes or pasta come with easy instructions and common vocabulary, so they're perfect for practice.
What about using social media for motivation? Can it help or distract?
It can do both, honestly. Following English learning pages or engaging in English conversations online boosts motivation, but mindless scrolling can kill it.
How do you recommend balancing social media use then?
Set specific times for learning, related content, and avoid endless scrolling by using timers or apps that limit screen time.
Sounds like a smart plan. Now, what role do friends and family play in a learner's motivation?
Immense role. Supportive friends and family can encourage, practice with you, or simply cheer you on, which makes a big difference.
And if someone doesn't have that support at home,
Online communities and language partners become even more important. Finding your people virtually can fill that gap.
what about rewards beyond treats or breaks? Any creative ideas?
Celebrating with something meaningful, like buying a book you've wanted, planning a small trip, or sharing progress on social media, makes motivation tangible.
Let's talk about motivation dips. What signs should learners watch for?
Losing interest, procrastinating, feeling anxious about mistakes, or comparing themselves negatively to others are common signs.
And what's the best immediate fix for those dips?
Taking a mindful break, changing learning activities, or revisiting your goals can help reset motivation quickly.
Sophia, how can learners stay motivated during times of rapid progress versus slow progress?
Celebrate rapid progress, but be patient and persistent during slow times. Both are natural parts of learning.
That's a healthy mindset. How important is self-talk in motivation?
Very important. Positive self-talk can encourage you to keep going, while negative self-talk can sabotage your efforts.
Could you share some examples of positive self-talk?
Sure, phrases like, I am improving every day, mistakes help me learn, and I can do this, empower learners.
How about dealing with setbacks? Any motivation strategies?
View setbacks as learning opportunities. Analyze what didn't work, adjust your approach, and keep moving forward.
What advice do you have for learners juggling English with work or school?
Prioritize short, focused sessions and integrate English into daily routines, like listening to podcasts during commutes.
Podcasts are a great suggestion. Do you have favorites?
Yes, The English We Speak, by the BBC and ESL Pod, are both entertaining and educational.
How can learners make listening practice motivating?
Choose topics you love, take notes, and try to summarize what you heard. It makes listening active and rewarding.
Sophia, what role does consistency play in motivation?
It's the backbone. Regular practice, even if brief, keeps motivation steady and skills growing.
How can learners build consistency?
By creating a routine, setting reminders, and holding themselves accountable through journals or study buddies.
Accountability sounds powerful. What are some creative ways to stay accountable?
Using apps with streaks, joining weekly challenges, or making public commitments on social media all help.
What's your take on using native speakers for motivation?
Immensely motivating. Conversations with natives provide real feedback and cultural insights that textbooks can't.
For shy learners, what's the best way to start speaking with natives?
Start with text chats, then voice messages, and finally video calls. Gradual exposure builds confidence.
What's the best advice you can give to someone who feels stuck in their English journey?
Remember that every learner faces challenges. Stay curious, keep practicing, and don't be afraid to ask for help.
Sophia, your insights are incredible. Thank you for this deep dive into motivation.
Thank you, Jacob. I hope our listeners find ways to keep their English learning journey exciting and fulfilling.
That's a wrap for now, but the conversation continues next time.
Before we pause, Jacob, one last thought: how important do you think passion is in staying motivated for language learning?
Passion is everything, Sophia. Without it, motivation can feel forced. When learners find topics or reasons that truly excite them, learning becomes a joyful experience, not a chore.
Exactly. And passion often fuels perseverance through the tough moments. Do you have any tips for discovering or reigniting that passion?
I'd say exploring different English content, music, movies, books, or hobbies in English can help. Sometimes it's about connecting language learning with what you already love.
That's so true. When you link English to your passions, it stops being just language and becomes part of your lifestyle.
And when motivation dips, returning to those passions can remind you why you started in the first place.
Yes, it's like having a personal cheerleader inside your mind, pushing you forward.
So, listeners, think about what makes you happy and try to blend that with your English practice.
And don't forget, motivation is not a straight line. Embrace the ups and downs as part of your unique learning story.
Wise words, Sophia. Thanks for sharing your experience and advice today.
Thank you, Jacob. I'm excited to continue this journey with everyone next time.
Absolutely. Until then, keep your motivation alive and your English growing.
Jacob, since we talked so much about motivation, I'm curious, how do you personally keep yourself motivated when learning something new?
That's a great question, Sophia. For me, setting small, achievable goals is key. It helps me feel a sense of progress and accomplishment regularly.
I completely agree. Breaking big goals into smaller chunks makes the process less overwhelming and much more manageable.
Also, I like to track my progress visually, like using a checklist or a calendar. Seeing those marks fills me with motivation to keep going.
Yes, visual progress is a powerful motivator. It's proof that your hard work is paying off.
What about you? How do you stay motivated, especially during challenging times?
I rely a lot on reminding myself of my why. Why I started learning English, what I want to achieve, and how it will impact my life positively.
That's inspiring. So, a clear purpose is like a compass guiding you through the ups and downs.
Exactly. And I also celebrate the little wins, like understanding a tricky phrase or having a short conversation without hesitation.
Celebrating small victories definitely keeps the spirit alive. It's easy to get discouraged if you only look at the big picture.
Absolutely. Another thing I do is mix up my learning methods. If I feel bored, I switch from reading to watching movies, or from writing to chatting with friends.
Variety is the spice of learning. Changing activities can reignite interest and motivation.
And it helps engage different parts of the brain, which deepens learning.
Have you ever used music or songs as a motivational tool?
All the time, singing along to English songs makes learning fun and improves pronunciation naturally.
Do you have any favorite artists or genres you recommend for learners?
I love pop and acoustic songs because the lyrics are clear and catchy. Artists like Ed Sheeran or Adele are great examples.
Those are excellent choices for beginners. Songs with simple, repetitive lyrics work best.
Definitely. And watching music videos adds visual context, which helps understand meaning better.
Speaking of visuals, do you use movies or TV shows as part of your motivation strategy?
Yes, watching shows with subtitles at first, then without, helps build confidence and vocabulary.
What about learners who feel overwhelmed by fast speech in movies?
I recommend starting with children's shows or series designed for language learners. They're slower and use simpler vocabulary.
That's a smart approach. What's your favorite show or movie for learning English?
I really enjoy Friends. It's funny, uses everyday conversation, and the episodes are short.
Friends is a classic for learners. The humor keeps it entertaining and memorable.
Humor is a great motivator too, it makes learning enjoyable and less stressful.
Let's talk about motivation in speaking practice. Many learners hesitate to speak because of fear of mistakes. How do you help them stay motivated?
I always tell them mistakes are proof that you're trying. The more you speak, the faster you improve.
Positive reinforcement is so important. Encouraging learners to celebrate effort, not just perfection.
Exactly. I also suggest practicing in safe environments, language exchange groups, or friendly tutors where they feel comfortable.
How can technology help with motivation in speaking?
Apps that use speech recognition, like Duolingo or HelloTalk, give instant feedback, which is motivating because learners see their progress clearly.
And chatting with real people on language exchange apps adds social motivation, right?
Yes, making friends and cultural exchange make learning meaningful and fun.
What about motivation for writing? Many learners find it tough to stay consistent.
I recommend keeping a simple daily journal. Writing about your day in English builds habit and reduces pressure because it's personal and private.
That's a great tip. Starting small makes it less intimidating.
Also, sharing your writing with supportive communities can boost motivation through feedback and encouragement.
How important is goal setting in maintaining motivation across all skills?
Crucial. Goals give direction and help learners track what they've achieved versus what's left.
Do you prefer short-term goals or long-term goals?
Both, short-term goals keep you motivated daily or weekly, while long-term goals give you a bigger vision to work toward.
Can you give an example of a well-balanced goal plan?
Sure. A long-term goal might be speak confidently in an English meeting in 6 months. Short-term goals could be learn 10 new phrases a week or practice speaking 3 times a week.
Those are very actionable. How can learners stay motivated when they don't see immediate results?
Reminding themselves that language learning is a marathon, not a sprint, and that progress is often invisible, but happening under the surface.
That's so important. Patience and persistence are key.
And tracking progress with journals or apps helps show improvements that might not be obvious day to day.
How do you stay motivated when life gets busy and English practice falls behind?
I try to integrate English into everyday moments, listening to a podcast while cooking, or reading a short article during breaks.
Integrating language into daily life makes it feel natural rather than a separate task.
Exactly. And when possible, I remind myself why I started, to reconnect with my motivation.
Sophia, this has been such a rich conversation. Any final motivational advice for our listeners?
Yes, be kind to yourself, celebrate every step forward, and remember that your effort matters more than perfection.
Perfect closing thoughts for now. We'll pick up more next time.
Looking forward to it, Jacob.
Sophia, since motivation ties so closely with mindset, how do you think a positive mindset affects language learning?
A positive mindset is everything, Jacob. It helps learners stay resilient when facing challenges and turns mistakes into learning opportunities rather than failures.
I've noticed that learners with a growth mindset often make faster progress. They believe abilities can improve with effort.
Exactly. And when learners see setbacks as temporary, they're less likely to give up.
How can someone develop a positive mindset if they're stuck in self-doubt?
One way is to practice self-talk, replacing negative thoughts like, I'm not good enough, with encouraging ones like, I'm improving every day.
That's a powerful habit. Do you have any exercises or routines to help with this?
Journaling gratitude or achievements each day, no matter how small, helps shift focus to progress.
That sounds doable. What role does patience play in developing a positive mindset?
Huge role. Language learning takes time, so patience helps avoid frustration and burnout.
Can visualization or meditation help with motivation and mindset?
Absolutely. Visualizing success or calming the mind through meditation builds confidence and reduces anxiety.
Interesting. So, combining mindset work with practical learning creates a balanced approach.
Yes, both mental and practical efforts fuel each other.
How important is a supportive environment for motivation?
Crucial. Encouragement from friends, family, or a learning community boosts confidence and keeps motivation high.
What advice do you have for learners who don't have support at home?
Seek online communities or language partners where you can find encouragement and practice.
Social connection really makes a difference.
It does. Language is social, so interaction motivates learning.
Let's talk about setbacks. How do you recommend learners bounce back from them?
Reflect on what caused the setback, adjust your approach, and remind yourself setbacks are normal.
So, setbacks are part of the journey, not the end.
Exactly. Learning resilience through setbacks makes you stronger.
Can you share a personal story about overcoming a language learning setback?
Sure, once I struggled with pronunciation and felt frustrated. Instead of quitting, I started recording myself daily. Over time, my confidence and pronunciation improved significantly.
That's inspiring. Taking action instead of giving up is the key.
Yes, and celebrating small improvements kept me motivated.
What role does curiosity play in motivation?
Curiosity drives exploration and makes learning exciting, which naturally fuels motivation.
So, asking questions and seeking to understand deeply helps maintain interest.
Absolutely. Curiosity transforms learning into an adventure.
How can learners cultivate curiosity?
By exploring topics they're passionate about in English and being open to new ideas.
That makes learning personalized and meaningful.
Yes, personal meaning is a strong motivator.
Sophia, this conversation has been packed with insights. I'm sure our listeners are feeling motivated already.
I hope so, Jacob. Motivation is a journey we all share, and together, we can make it stronger.
Looking forward to continuing these conversations soon.
Me too.
Sophia, let's dive deeper into how technology impacts motivation in language learning. What are your thoughts on apps and online platforms?
Technology has transformed learning, Jacob. Language apps make practice accessible anytime, which helps maintain consistent motivation.
Do you think all technology is equally effective for motivation?
Not necessarily. The best tools engage learners actively and adapt to their progress, rather than just passive consumption.
Like gamification features.
Exactly. Points, levels, and challenges can boost motivation by making learning fun and rewarding.
But can too much gamification become a distraction?
It can if the learner focuses more on rewards than actual learning. Balance is key.
What about social media? Does it help or hinder motivation?
Social media can motivate by connecting learners worldwide, but it can also overwhelm or distract.
How can learners use social media effectively?
Follow language learning groups, watch educational videos, and engage in conversations while limiting time spent scrolling aimlessly.
Great advice. Have you seen any specific online communities that boost motivation well?
Yes, communities like language exchange forums or platforms, like Italki help by providing real conversation practice and peer support.
Speaking of practice, how important is setting realistic goals for maintaining motivation?
Very important. Goals give direction and measurable milestones, which encourage persistence.
What kinds of goals do you recommend?
Short-term achievable goals, like learning 10 new words a day, and long-term goals, like holding a 10-minute conversation.
How do you advise learners to track their progress?
Journaling, using apps with progress tracking, or recording themselves speaking regularly.
What about motivation dips? How should learners deal with those?
They're normal. When motivation dips, taking a short break or switching learning methods can help.
Can you share some tips for reigniting motivation when it fades?
Revisiting the reasons why you started, rewarding yourself for small wins, and trying new activities like watching movies or reading interesting articles.
Sophia, how do you think motivation changes as learners become more advanced?
It often shifts from external rewards to intrinsic enjoyment, like appreciating cultural nuances or expressing complex ideas.
So motivation evolves with skill level.
Yes, and adapting your goals and learning style accordingly keeps motivation alive.
Do you think motivation is more important than talent or natural ability?
Definitely. Consistent motivation usually outperforms natural talent because it drives continuous effort.
That's encouraging for learners who feel they're not naturally gifted.
Exactly. Anyone can improve with motivation and practice.
Sophia, this is such a rich topic. What's your final advice for listeners about staying motivated?
Remember that motivation fluctuates, but keeping your passion alive, being patient, and celebrating every step forward will sustain your journey.
Thank you so much, Sophia, for these invaluable insights.
It's my pleasure, Jacob. I hope everyone listening feels inspired to keep going.
Sophia, since motivation and mindset are so deeply connected, how do you think we can build a strong mindset specifically tailored for language learning?
That's a great question, Jacob. Building a strong mindset starts with embracing challenges, rather than fearing them. When learners see difficulties as opportunities to grow, they become more resilient.
So, would you say mindset is more about how we react to obstacles than the obstacles themselves?
Absolutely. Two learners can face the same difficulty, but their mindset determines whether they get discouraged or motivated to try again.
How can learners start shifting their mindset if they're stuck in a negative loop?
One effective way is to practice self-compassion. Instead of harshly judging yourself for mistakes, try to treat yourself like a friend offering encouragement.
I love that. It's so easy to get frustrated with ourselves.
Exactly. Also, setting small, achievable goals helps build confidence and positive reinforcement.
What role do you think habits play in shaping mindset and motivation?
Huge role. Consistent habits turn effort into routine, reducing reliance on fluctuating motivation.
Could you give an example of a good habit for language learners?
Sure, setting aside a fixed time daily, for even 15 minutes of practice creates momentum and signals your brain to expect learning.
How about habits that learners should avoid because they hurt motivation?
Procrastination and negative self-talk are big killers. Also, overloading yourself with too much at once can cause burnout.
So, pacing yourself and being kind to yourself are key.
Yes, and tracking progress, even small wins, can help keep you motivated and positive.
What about external factors? How do environment and social circle influence mindset and motivation?
Great environments support growth. Being around motivated people or supportive communities encourages similar behavior.
And if someone's environment isn't supportive?
Then seeking online groups, language partners, or even local classes can create a positive space for learning.
Do you think mindset can be taught or is it something natural?
It can definitely be developed and strengthened through intentional practice and reflection.
That's encouraging for all our listeners. It means no matter where you start, you can build a strong mindset.
Exactly. Mindset is a muscle that grows stronger with exercise.
Sophia, thanks for breaking down mindset so clearly. Let's talk next about how motivation changes during different learning phases.
I'd love that. Motivation often looks very different when you're a beginner versus when you're advanced.
Shall we dive into that next?
Definitely. When learners first start, motivation is often driven by excitement and curiosity. Everything is new and interesting, so it's easier to stay motivated.
That initial excitement is powerful. But I've heard many learners say they lose motivation after a while. Why is that?
That's very common. After the beginner phase, learners often hit a plateau where progress feels slower. The newness wears off, and frustration can set in.
So what can learners do to push through that plateau?
One way is to set new, meaningful goals that match their current level. Also, trying different learning methods can keep things fresh.
Can you give examples of different methods?
Sure, if you've been focusing on grammar exercises, try watching movies or listening to podcasts in the target language.
That sounds fun. How about motivation for advanced learners?
At advanced levels, motivation often comes from intrinsic factors, like wanting to understand culture deeply or communicate with native speakers fluently.
So the why behind learning evolves.
Exactly. It shifts from external rewards to personal fulfillment and mastery.
Does this mean motivation gets easier or harder at advanced stages?
It can be both. Some find it easier because they enjoy the language more. Others struggle because progress feels incremental.
How can advanced learners stay motivated despite slow progress?
By focusing on meaningful experiences, like traveling or discussing topics they love, and by recognizing the value of every bit of progress.
Sophia, do you think motivation and mindset work together differently at various stages?
Yes, they're always interconnected, but their influence changes. Early on, motivation might drive mindset, while later, a strong mindset sustains motivation.
That's a helpful way to think about it. Any advice for learners feeling stuck right now?
Take a step back, remind yourself why you started, try something new, and be patient with yourself.
Perfect advice. Shall we explore how daily routines impact motivation and mindset next?
Absolutely, Jacob. Daily routines play a huge role in shaping both motivation and mindset, because they create structure and predictability.
That makes sense. How can someone design a daily routine that supports language learning effectively?
Start small, incorporate short, consistent practice sessions at the same time each day. This consistency builds habit and reduces decision fatigue.
What kind of activities would you recommend including in these daily sessions?
A mix is best: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Even 10 minutes of each spread throughout the week can make a big difference.
How important is it to vary activities to keep motivation high?
Very important. Variety keeps things interesting and prevents boredom. It also helps develop different skills evenly.
What about the environment during these sessions? Does that affect motivation?
Definitely. A quiet, comfortable space with minimal distractions helps focus and creates positive associations with learning.
Some people say they're too busy to create routines. Any tips for busy learners?
Even 5 minutes counts. Use pockets of time like during commutes or breaks to practice listening or flashcards.
So it's about quality and consistency rather than quantity.
Exactly. Regular engagement matters more than long, sporadic sessions.
How do you suggest learners stay motivated to keep their routine going?
Tracking progress visually, like with a calendar or app, helps. Celebrating small wins reinforces motivation.
What if someone misses a day or two? Should they feel guilty?
No guilt, flexibility is key. Missing a day is normal. Just get back on track without self-criticism.
That's such a healthy perspective. How about integrating social elements into daily routines?
Fantastic idea. Language exchange partners, study groups, or online forums add accountability and social motivation.
Does sharing progress with others help mindset?
Yes, it creates positive feedback loops and makes learning more enjoyable.
Sophia, I think listeners will find this so practical. Any final thoughts on routines and mindset?
Remember that routines are tools to serve your goals, not rigid rules. Keep adjusting until you find what energizes and sustains you.
That's inspiring. Thanks for sharing such valuable insights, Sophia. Let's keep exploring more tips and stories next.
I'm excited to. Another aspect that really influences motivation and mindset is the role of self-reflection.
Self-reflection? That sounds interesting. How does it help in language learning?
When learners pause to think about what's working and what's challenging, they gain awareness. This helps them adjust strategies and celebrate progress.
So it's like checking in with yourself regularly.
Exactly. For example, journaling about your learning experience can reveal patterns and keep you mindful.
Do you recommend any specific reflection practices?
Yes, setting aside time weekly to review what you've learned, what was difficult, and what you enjoyed.
That sounds doable. Can reflection also affect mindset?
Absolutely. Reflecting on setbacks without judgment can build resilience and a growth mindset.
How can learners avoid feeling discouraged when reflecting on challenges?
By framing challenges as opportunities to learn rather than failures.
What about motivation? Does reflection impact that too?
Yes, recognizing small victories during reflection boosts motivation and confidence.
I see. Do you think technology can help with self-reflection?
Definitely. Language apps with progress tracking and journaling features are great tools.
Are there any risks to relying too much on apps for reflection?
Sometimes, yes. It's important to balance digital tools with personal, mindful reflection to avoid becoming too mechanical.
That balance seems crucial. Sophia, what advice do you have for listeners to start their self-reflection journey?
Start simple. Even a few sentences a week about your language learning feelings and experiences can make a difference.
Thanks for that, Sophia. Shall we move on to how setting the right goals ties everything together?
Yes, goal setting is the compass that guides motivation, mindset, and routines effectively.
Perfect, let's dive into that next.
Great! When it comes to setting goals, the key is making them clear, achievable, and meaningful.
Clear and achievable, I hear a lot about SMART goals. Can you explain what that means?
Sure, SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. It's a framework to help set realistic and motivating goals.
Can you give an example of a SMART goal for language learning?
Absolutely. Instead of saying, I want to improve my English, a SMART goal would be, I want to learn 20 new vocabulary words every week for the next month.
That's very specific. Why is being specific so important?
Specific goals give you a clear direction and make it easier to track progress.
What about relevance? How do you determine if a goal is relevant?
Relevance means your goal aligns with your personal reasons for learning the language. For example, if you want to travel, practicing conversation might be more relevant than studying advanced grammar.
That makes sense. How does breaking big goals into smaller steps help motivation?
Smaller goals create frequent wins. This boosts motivation because you feel successful regularly, instead of waiting for a distant, big achievement.
What's your advice if someone sets a goal and finds it too hard to reach?
Don't be afraid to adjust it. Flexibility is key. Sometimes goals need tweaking as you learn more about your pace and interests.
How important is writing down goals?
Very important. Writing them down reinforces commitment and helps you remember them.
What about sharing goals with others? Does that impact motivation?
Yes, sharing creates accountability. Friends, tutors, or online communities can provide encouragement and support.
Do you recommend tracking progress toward goals? How?
Definitely. Using apps, journals, or charts to log your achievements keeps motivation high and mindset positive.
Sophia, how often should learners review and update their goals?
I suggest reviewing goals every month to see what's working and what needs adjustment.
That's practical. Any final tips on goal setting for our listeners?
Remember, goals are your roadmap. Make them personal, flexible, and celebrate every step forward.
Fantastic insights, Sophia. Let's continue exploring more ways to boost learning motivation and mindset soon.
Absolutely, Jacob. Another critical factor to consider is how to deal with setbacks and stay motivated during tough times.
Yes, that's something many learners struggle with. What's your advice on handling setbacks?
First, it's important to normalize setbacks. They happen to everyone. The key is how you respond to them.
So, adopting a positive mindset around setbacks is crucial.
Exactly. Viewing setbacks as learning opportunities, rather than failures, can transform your mindset and keep motivation alive.
Can you share any strategies to bounce back after a discouraging experience?
Sure. One is to break down the problem, identify what went wrong, then create a simple action plan to improve.
That sounds very manageable. How about emotional aspects? Do you have tips to stay emotionally resilient?
Mindfulness and self-compassion are powerful. Being kind to yourself, recognizing your efforts, and staying present help manage frustration.
That's so important. Many people are very hard on themselves.
True, and that can lead to burnout or giving up. So, practicing patience and celebrating small wins is essential.
How do you recommend learners maintain motivation during plateaus when progress feels slow?
Plateaus are natural. I encourage switching up methods, setting mini challenges, or revisiting why you started to rekindle passion.
Does connecting with others help during these times?
Absolutely. Support groups, language partners, or tutors provide encouragement and accountability.
Sophia, you mentioned mini challenges. Can you give an example?
Sure. For example, a 7-day speaking challenge where you talk to yourself or a friend for 5 minutes each day.
That's a great way to push through boredom or stagnation.
Exactly, and it keeps learning fun and engaging.
What about using rewards? Do they help motivation?
Yes, setting small rewards after achieving goals can boost motivation. It could be a treat, a break, or a fun activity.
To wrap this up, any final thoughts on resilience and motivation?
Resilience is a muscle. You build it by facing challenges mindfully and with kindness toward yourself.
Thanks, Sophia. This has been an empowering conversation. I'm sure our listeners will benefit a lot from these insights.
I hope so, Jacob. Looking forward to continuing this journey together.
Absolutely, Sophia. Since resilience is so vital, maybe we can talk about practical daily habits that help build it over time.
Great idea. Daily habits like consistent practice, positive self-talk, and setting small, achievable tasks can gradually strengthen resilience.
Can you explain more about positive self-talk? How can it influence motivation?
Positive self-talk is about replacing negative thoughts with encouraging ones. Instead of saying, "I'm not good at this," say, "I'm improving every day."
That sounds powerful. Is this something learners can practice consciously?
Yes, and it becomes automatic with practice. It rewires the brain to focus on possibilities rather than limitations.
Are there any tools or exercises to help with positive self-talk?
Journaling affirmations or recording yourself saying positive phrases can help reinforce this mindset.
I like that. What about the role of routine in building motivation and resilience?
Routine creates structure and reduces decision fatigue, making it easier to stay consistent.
So, even simple daily schedules can make a big difference.
Exactly. Consistency, even in small doses, beats irregular intense efforts.
What's your advice for listeners struggling to create or stick to routines?
Start small. Pick 1 or 2 habits and build gradually. Celebrate sticking to them even for one day.
How does mindset affect the way learners handle mistakes during daily practice?
A growth mindset sees mistakes as feedback. This perspective reduces fear and encourages experimentation.
Do you think sharing mistakes with others can also help?
Definitely. Sharing creates community and reminds learners they're not alone.
Sophia, let's touch on the importance of rest and mental breaks in motivation.
Rest is essential. Overworking leads to burnout. Mental breaks refresh the brain and improve focus.
What are some good ways to take effective breaks?
Short walks, mindfulness exercises, or switching to a different activity can rejuvenate energy.
Thanks for sharing all these valuable insights, Sophia. I'm sure our listeners will find them incredibly helpful.
Thank you, Jacob. It's been wonderful sharing these tips. Remember, motivation and resilience grow with patience and practice.
Absolutely. To all our listeners, keep believing in your progress no matter how small it feels.
And don't forget to enjoy the learning journey. It's just as important as the destination.
Well said, Sophia. We'll be back soon with more engaging conversations on the English Hour.
Looking forward to it. Take care, everyone, and keep shining.
Thanks for listening.